Hi and welcome back. Today I will make some artist trading cards using mainly the textured mushroom stamps, and I already prepared some of the stamps using my Gelli prints, and I will show you how I did this. It's a great way to use up all your Gelli scraps that are laying around. I'm stamping the mushrooms randomly to all these paper scraps, and later I will cut them into pieces and put them together. I will just speed up the stamping part a little bit. I'm using black StazOn ink to stamp the mushroom. StazOn works the best on an acrylic surface as it dries pretty fast, and of course it's permanent. I'm using StazOn ink to stamp the mushrooms because it works best on a Gelli printed surface as it dries the fastest. And if you're interested in some Gelli printing videos, you will find a bunch of them on my channel, and I will also link up the playlist at the end of this video. It's now time to cut out the caps of the mushrooms, and I have to decide which one should be the cap and which one should become the stem. And I start with the ones where I have only stamped the head of the mushroom, so I can just I have no choice with these because they have no stem, so I have to cut those out first. You could also cut out the gills under the head of the mushroom separately in a different color. Before I do that, I would just lay it on top of different stamp impressions of the same mushroom to see which color combination I like the best. Here I have another one where I have no full stamp, so I will cut out the gills from this one and combine it with the first. This is something I often do at night while watching TV. I stamp all the images and then I cut the pieces out in front of the TV, and later I come back and combine all the pieces and have a look which one I like the best. It's really hard to cut out these tiny pieces separately, so I would recommend cutting out the cap of the one you want to be the gills, and then cut out the cap of another one to place it on top of the one where you want to see the gills. So it's a bit complicated to explain for me because I'm usually from Germany and maybe I don't find the right words. I'm still searching for a nice combination, and I think I will pick this one. I will then cut out this mushroom and I lay everything aside, and I will prepare the next one, and when I'm done I will glue all my mushroom pieces together. To make the finished mushroom even more perfect, you can color the edges of the paper in black. So when you put everything together later, there will be no white lines from the paper. I now glue everything together. I'm using the Tombow Gluestick because I like this one the most. It's easy to use. It doesn't give me a lot of glue on the back, and it's it has a bit of time to push the elements where they have to be. It doesn't dry immediately. As I said, usually I would just cut out all the pieces and then I would glue the mushrooms finally. And here are some of the others I've already made. You can go even more in detail and cut out more elements like this and then glue it on top to make it more colorful and give it more more variety. I did this with all the mushrooms I had stamped, and another thing you can do to make them more colorful or to add detail is to use alcohol markers. What also would work great are the Pitt Artist pens. If you're working with alcohol markers, you have to be a little bit careful because of the StazOn ink, as it will bleed if you rub over it very intensively. So I would just be a bit careful, but it works out really good. And as this mushroom was pretty white, I decided to go in with a little bit more color. It's also perfect to add some shadows, and that gives the mushrooms more dimension. I'm done with all the mushrooms, and now it's time to prepare the backgrounds for my artist trading cards. And I've pulled out some of my Gelli prints where I thought they fit from the colors, and this one, it was printed with Archival Inks. I believe there is a reel on my Instagram. And as I said, you will find a lot of Gelli printing videos on my channel. I have cut out the Gelli prints with a die. Of course, you can just use your paper cutter and cut it to size. You have to make them 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And I have also prepared already some backsides for the cards with my ATC backsides stamp set, and I have stamped it in a yellow color and also cut it with the die. I will now glue these together before I start creating the artist trading cards, and I just will use the Tombow Gluestick. The backside set comes with some more stamps where you have words like material, title, date, artist, etc. And later I will stamp these words and write the information to the card. I have done this to all of the cards, and now I am creating 3 of them so you can see how I use the mushrooms. I have also a bunch of reels prepared and already posted for my Instagram, where you can see how I make these quick artist trading cards. I will stamp some leaves around the card, and I'm using leaves from the Carved Whimsy wood stamp set with some autumn themed colors. I decided to zoom a little bit more in so you can see it better. And here I just go through all the mushrooms and lay them on top to find a perfect match. It's a bit hard to decide which ones I want to use because I have so many, but I think that's also a fun part of the process. If you're not sure which ones you should pick, you can always take a photo of the different ideas and combinations, and then you can flip through the photo and see what fits the best. To adhere my mushrooms, I just use some simple wet craft glue. I'm inking up the edges of the card with I believe it's a dark brown color. I really like inked edges, it looks a bit more finished. Later, when I have created my cards, I will adhere also a sentiment to each of them. For my next card, I want to emboss the owl from the Carved Fox and Owl stamp set, and so I'm stamping it with embossing ink, and then I'm adding embossing powder, and I'm using a metallic violet powder. I really like how this turned out, and I think I could leave it like it is because it looks really nice, but I want to bring out the owl a bit more, and as the embossing powder is it's a plastic surface, I will use white acrylic paint and cover this up, and then I will let it dry a little bit and wipe off the paint from the owl, and you will see how it will look. I don't want to have harsh edges, so I use a baby wipe to blend them a little bit. Now this has to dry. I would not recommend drying it completely or overnight, because I don't know if then you can remove any of the paint. I haven't tried it, but it has to be dry a little bit, because otherwise I would wipe away all of it and then it has no effect. And now I'm using a baby wipe to remove the color from the oil. And you can see that the paint that's not on the embossed parts will stay in its place. I really like this effect. I think it brings out the oil even more. I'm now searching for the right combination of mushrooms, and then I will just glue these to my card. Before I do this, I will ink up the edges of this one, and I believe I'm using a dark violet color so it matches the stamped oil. I have the feeling that it's pretty empty under my owl and on the background, so I decided to add some more stamping to the card, and I'm just picking a stamp from the Mixed Media Mark stamp set with some writing on it to add some texture. Here I'm using Archival ink. It's also good to stamp on an acrylic surface. You have to be a little bit more careful because it doesn't dry as fast as StazOn does. Finally, I'm adhering the mushrooms. And as I said, later I will add a sentiment to each of the cards to finish them up. For my next card, I'm going to use the fox stamp, and this one I would just stamp in black without any embossing. When you're stamping, it's always important to have a pretty good inked up stamp pad. I didn't believe this for a long time, and I always used not enough ink, or often I didn't use enough ink for my stamp pads, and now I'm re-inking them pretty often and with a lot of ink, and I get much more better impressions. I'm also adding some of the leaf stamps around the card as it's not very textured. The leaves are the same I've just used before. I will link up all the stamp sets I've used today in the video description. You will there also find a link to my blog, where I usually have a blog post about the video. It has not much writing, but it has photos you can look at. To make the fox pop up more from the background, I color some parts in with the white Posca paint pen. And again, I'm adding some of my mushrooms. I always find combinations where I have similar colors on my mushroom and on the background. I think that makes it look cohesive and not too separated. Before I glue the mushrooms down, I also ink up the edges of the card. My cards are finished. I have added a sentiment to each of them. Sometimes I have stamped it directly to the background, or I have stamped it to some Gelli printed scraps and cut it out and adhered it to the card. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I wish you a wonderful weekend. Bye!